Hello everyone, today is 28th of August. Now it's 8:30 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment. And I will start with a short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. And main news today we are receiving from South Donetsk sector of the front line because according to number of sources, Russian armed forces yesterday, as a result of lightning attack, lightning offensive, established full control over the Konstantinovka settlement, which is of course a big deal, very big deal. I don't know what happened. I'm still surprised that Kiev regime's defense lines collapsed this fast in western parts of Konstantinovka, but many sources, by the way, not just the Russian sources, but even Ukrainian sources are confirming information that Konstantinovka is under full Russian control now. And even though this information comes as some sort of surprise, of course, we had some reasoning to believe that Russian forces will advance in Konstantinovka area. I also spoke about it in previous updates, especially because of the Russian progress in towards Vadiana. Basically, in previous updates, I reported several times about advances of the Russian troops in this area and Russian fire control and direct control, physical control over the 0053 to main supply and support line between Ugledar and Konstantinovka. And of course, it was quite obvious that after garrisons of the Kiev regime troops in these settlements, Konstantinovka and Ugledar lost lost communication basically and supply and support line, Russian troops will have a better upper hand to conduct their further offensive operations, and that's exactly what happened. But still this news comes as a somewhat surprise because Russian advance in Konstantinovka was just too fast, really. I wouldn't be surprised to learn later on that a significant number of Kiev regime troops surrender in this area, and that allowed Russian troops to advance this rapidly. But in any case, this is a significant success of the Russian troops, and I guess it's only a matter of time, and we will see battles for Katerinovka and Antonovka settlements. And of course, we should expect any time now intensification of the Russian operations in Ugledar, Vadiana, first of all, and also Ugledar directions. So this is big, and in my understanding, this is a major news that we are receiving right now from front lines. Although, of course, Russian troops continue advances towards Pokrovsk direction. Yesterday, in a second update, I reported that Membrik settlement on the southern flank of Pokrovsk sector is under full Russian control now. Also, Kalinova is under full Russian control. Russian troops establish yet again many commentators, many military channels are somewhat surprised how rapidly Russian troops advanced in the area of Novogrodovka, and right now Russian troops are advancing towards this settlement here, Selidova, also on the southern flank of the Pokrovsk sector. Russian troops establish control over the Novogrodovka, as I already said, and the Russian troops establish control over the Nikolaevka, Krasny Yar, Krutoy Yar settlements. And also some sources are reporting about clashes in Sukhoy Yar settlement, in the vicinity of this settlement. But in any case, if we zoom out a little bit and take a look at the map, well, it is becoming clear that Russian forces, forward units of the Russian troops, are in just about 2 kilometers away from Nikolaevka, for example. It's only about 2 kilometers before Mirnograd city, which is relatively large town and part of Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration, of course. And well, we can say battle for this agglomeration has begun. And well, due to basically total collapse of Kyiv regime's defense lines in this area, now we should expect that both these settlements, Mirnograd and Pokrovsk, and surrounding villages will become under full Russian control, possibly before end of September. Before end of September. And this is despite the fact that these Mirnograd and Pokrovsk settlements are quite large, by the way. But if we take into account how rapidly Russian troops establish control over the Novogrodovka, which is also a large settlement, then nothing should really surprise us no more. I mean, it is obvious to me that on Donbass front, Kyiv's regime's defense lines are totally collapsing. Also, by the way, Russian troops continue advance in Toretsk direction, and because of course focus of Russian troops is Toretsk after liberating New York. And reports are coming in about desperate situation of the Kyiv regime's garrison in Toretsk, and units of the Kyiv regime's formations are making videos now and asking for help. Not so much leadership of Kyiv regime's military, but they are asking for help for ordinary citizens, and also they are asking for support in terms of legal field, because they think they would have no choice but to retreat from Toretsk, possibly without orders, because they understand Kyiv regime will sacrifice them, and already sacrificed basically, and they understand they will be trialed most likely by Kyiv regime, and they are openly in their videos asking lawyers in Ukraine to protect them, which is I mean, unheard of. I never ever in my life see anything like that. Even though I cover many military conflicts, but never ever I see when military unit of one side, entire brigade, basically almost entire brigade, was asking for support to the loyals. Something is strange is happening with Kyiv regime's armed forces, and maybe, by the way, we are observing exactly what I was predicting, which is the beginning of the end of Kyiv regime's armed forces as a more or less capable entity. And of course, Kyiv regime's suicidal invasion of the Kursk region fast-tracked this process, undoubtedly. And when it comes to this Kursk salient, which is occupied temporarily by Kyiv regimes and NATO forces, including NATO mercenaries and instructors, well, Russian troops definitely stabilized the situation. Kyiv regime's brigades in this area are in a trap, and not even pro-Ukrainian commentators or experts are now expecting further advances of the Kyiv regime's troops in Kursk salient northwards towards Kurchatov city or Kursk nuclear power plant. Now, pro-Ukrainian and somewhat neutral channels, military channels, for example, are reporting that probably Kyiv regime will try to cut the road between border of the Sumy region in Diktyarnoe Obody area and towards Byakhovo or Внезапное, like that, by the way. But I mean, theoretically, yes, it might happen. but practically I don't think Kiev regime forces will be able to conduct any successful offensive operations in any directions when it comes to this Kursk salient. Of course, Kiev regime's armored groups, mobile armored groups, are still trying to find some weak spots in Russian defense lines, but nowadays we are basically receiving more and more information about clearing operations that Russian armed forces are conducting, and more and more settlements have been liberated from this invading force. Give it another couple of weeks, I guess before end of September, by the way, this invading force into Kursk region will be completely decimated, and Russian troops will most likely reestablish control over their border, and then probably will move further into Sumy region to liberate that region from occupying regime of the NATO that is controlling, that is in charge of Kiev regime, basically. So this is when it comes to short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. As I said, by the way, very significant developments are happening in Donbass. Konstantinovka is under full Russian control, which definitely surprised me, I have to say. Of course, Russian troops further advancing in Pokrovsk direction, Russian troops advancing in Toretsk direction. So, well, Kiev regime definitely has something to think about, and probably regret big time that they send their last strategical reserves that they have towards Kursk region, and by doing so jeopardize defense lines, their own defense lines, basically all along the front line, especially in Donetsk and South Donetsk sectors of the front. Let's continue with some other news now, and we have TASS News Agency's report that this morning about 7 o'clock emergency situation was declared in Kazan airport, international airport. Kazan is of course capital of Russia's Tatarstan Autonomous Republic, and this emergency was declared due to safety concerns, and no planes were received by airport and no planes were taken off from this airport. At least for now, I did not see on Russian media any reports that airport resume its work. So therefore, most likely, Russian air defense systems still are tracking some Ukrainian drones in the skies of over Tatarstan Autonomous Republic, and their safety measures are still in place. Of course, if any updates on that, I will share additional information on my Telegram channel, and also during the second news update. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Kiev regime is starting to evacuate state institutions and their officials, basically, from Selidova settlement, which is of course Pokrovsk direction. And once again, by the way, this information on its own indicates how desperate Kiev regime's situation is in Donbass, and this is Selidov, by the way, also quite a large settlement, and Russian troops are right now on outskirts of Selidova and advancing rapidly. Yesterday I saw on a video, I saw an internet video of the locals from Selidova when they were filming basically how police was running from the town, and also officials of all sorts. So probably Selidova will be also liberated by Russian troops in relatively short time. RT is also reporting that Russia issues a new estimate of Ukrainian losses in the Kursk salient area. I spoke about this yesterday during the second update, but of course not all members of our community watched that update, so I will share this information in today's first update also. So Ukrainian military's incursion into Russia's Kursk region has cost it dearly, with Kiev's forces suffering 6,600 casualties around 6,600 casualties, and losing 73 tanks in their cross-border offensive, according to a latest figure published by the Russian Defense Ministry. Ukrainian forces invaded Kursk region on August 6 in the largest attack on internationally recognized Russian territory since the start of hostilities in February 2022. The advance was quickly halted by the Russian military, but fighting in the region continues and Ukrainian troops still hold their number of settlements in the border area, reports RT. In the 3 weeks since the incursion began, Ukraine has lost more than 6,600 troops, 73 tanks, 34 infantry fighting vehicles, 62 armored personnel carriers, 432 armored fighting vehicles, and 201 other motor vehicles, the ministry announced on Tuesday. Russian forces have also destroyed 45 artillery guns of the Kiev regime and 13 multiple launch rocket systems, including 4 US-made HIMARS launchers, their ministry added. And there, by the way, many other weapon systems also being destroyed, including radio electronic warfare systems, air defense systems, and so on. So significant numbers, isn't it? Kiev regime already lost about 7,000 military personnel during this Kursk invasion, which is, by the way, in terms of Ukraine, 7,000 troops is a 2 full-blooded brigades. Although, of course, all of these, not all these troops that were neutralized were from 1 or 2 brigades. This is a number from a number of losses from all of the brigades that Kiev regime is deploying during this offensive. And we already know, for example, that 82nd and 80th brigades of the Kiev regime already been withdrawn from their largely withdrawn from the Kursk salient because they lost battle capability due to high losses. And I guess at least another 2 or 3 brigades of the Kiev regime in the Kursk salient are in a similar position right now due to high losses. Also, RT is reporting that Ukraine's top general admits kikus failure. I also spoke about it yesterday during the second update, but news, I guess, I think worth to be repeated. Well, information is that the Ukrainian military's Kursk region incursion was a high-stakes gambit aimed at forcing Russia to divert troops from key sectors on the front line, but Moscow didn't take the bite. Ukraine's top commander has admitted. And then, quote, one of the tasks of conducting an offensive operation in the Kursk direction was to divert significant enemy forces from other directions, first and foremost the Pokrovsk and Kurakhov directions, Colonel General Alexander Syrsky said at the press conference in Kiev on Tuesday. Syrsky is, of course, head of general staff of Kiev regime. Of course, the enemy understands this, so it continues to focus its main efforts on the Pokrovsk direction, where its most combat-ready units are concentrated. He continued, their enemy is trying to withdraw units from other directions, while in the Pokrovsk direction, on the contrary, it is increasing its efforts, Syrsky claimed, describing the situation in Pokrovsk and Kurakhov as quite difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces. And well, by the way, interesting admission from Syrsky. And yes, most likely, of course, one of the tasks, and I will say secondary task of Kiev regimes and NATO's invasion, basically, because this operation to invade Kursk region, of course, was planned by NATO generals, US, or to be more precise, US and UK generals, first of all. So this NATO and Kiev regime's invasion into Kursk region was, of course, it had 2 major tasks, main tasks, in my personal opinion. One is to reach Kurchatov city and to establish control over the Kursk nuclear power plant. And secondary task was obviously, it seems like, to divert, to force basically Moscow, Russian militaries to redeploy significant number of forces from other sectors of the front line towards Kursk, and NATO and the Kyiv regime failed completely in both areas, right? Even die-hard, extra crazy pro-Kyiv regime so-called experts in the West are no longer predicting that Kyiv regime will be able to reach Kurchatov. Their celebration has died down, and probably you didn't notice it in the if you are monitoring Western media outlets. They had a huge celebration in the first days of this invasion, isn't it? But they're not that optimistic now. It is obvious that there is no way Kyiv regime's forces will be able to reach Kurchatov city, and when it comes to secondary task to force Russian side to divert, to redeploy its forces from other sectors of the front line, this is also not happening. Maybe some troops were redeployed from Chisov Yar, Kupiansk, from northern sectors of the front towards Kursk salient, and therefore lately we don't really see significant activities, for example, in Volchansk, for example, area, or in Kupiansk direction. But when it comes to New York Toretsk agglomeration or Pokrovsk direction or South Donetsk sector, Russian troops never stop increasing pressure on the Kyiv regime. Exactly opposite had happened, and as a result we are observing, by the way, total collapse of Kyiv regime's defense lines in these directions, isn't it? It is what it is. So obviously NATO and the Kyiv regime failed with this invasion of the Kursk region. They didn't achieve basically nothing. They just allow Russian forces to more effectively demilitarize last strategic reserves of the Kyiv regime, and one may wonder, is Syrskyi and Zelensky are Russian assets? What they did, I mean, if you really think about it, by conducting this offensive into Kursk region, they allowed Russian forces to destroy last strategic reserves of Kyiv regime in one pocket, right? And by the way, question that I ask, of course, it's a irony, but for example, a Ukrainian blogger, politician, journalist, Anatoly Shar is also asking this question: is Zelensky and Syrskyi are Russian assets? Because what they did does not make any sense from point of view of him, Anatoly Shar, who is a Ukrainian journalist and blogger, and extremely popular, by the way, on internet. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. NATO and Kyiv regime definitely failed there big time, and I wonder how long it will take before high-ranking officials in Kyiv regime's military will lose their positions, including Syrskyi himself, because Zelensky has to blame all these failures on someone, right? And previously he removed Zaluzhny from position of head of general staff after Russian advances on the front lines, and most likely now Syrskyi will become a scapegoat, right? But anyways, who cares, man? Let them meet each other. Let them meet each other, those Nazis and the terrorists in the Kyiv regime, and no one cares about them for sure. Among decent people, I mean, the Western ruling class may still wants to use them and have some plans about them, but when it comes to ordinary decent people, by the way, in Ukraine or outside Ukraine, no one cares about Zelensky, Syrskyi, Mirsky, and the rest of the garbage that is formally in charge of this quasi-state under the name of Ukraine. But anyways, let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting that Russian armed forces neutralize about 30 neo-Nazis from Azov formation of the Kyiv regime in Makeyevka area trap was basically created, and these neo-Nazis entered this trap exactly and were eliminated rapidly, or you know, as a result of a short firefight or gunfight. RIA Novosti is also reporting that according to Pentagon still continues to create this plausible deniability, and official representative of Pentagon, Patrick Ryder, stated that Washington still has not changed its approach when it comes to Kyiv regime using US-made long-range weapon systems to strike deep inside the Russian territory. This is all false, by the way. Kyiv regime is already using HIMARS, for example, systems to conduct strikes deep inside the Russian territory, including Kursk region. This is just documented cases, by the way. And Russian armed forces already destroyed 4 or 5 HIMARS multi-launch rocket systems in the Sumy region that were basically firing at the Kursk region. So what this official representative of the Pentagon is talking about? They are still trying to create this illusion that Washington is against or not allowing Kyiv to use its long-range weapon systems to strike deep inside the Russian territory, but this is false, by the way. This is false. Washington, it is Washington, by the way. It's Washington's militaries that are basically operating with those HIMARS multi-launch rocket systems, right? Without US militaries and their intelligence input, the regime would not be able to do anything with those HIMARSes, right? They cannot operate with the targeting system. They have no coordinates, right? Because Kyiv regime has no satellites, has no intelligence, has nothing, basically. So this is clearly like psyop somewhat to maintain in hands of Washington this plausible deniability. And therefore, Russian side definitely have to be ready for any provocation with these long-range weapon systems that Kyiv regime is deploying, that NATO member states are providing Kyiv regime. And when I say any provocation, I actually mean this. Pentagon may, out of desperation, Western ruling class or US, in this particular case, administration, may even authorize operations to strike Moscow, for example. There are several F-16s, right, in Ukraine. It was already reported. Most likely, US has delivered their long-range cruise missiles, JASSM or something like that, that are somewhat similar to British Storm Shadow and French Scalp EG missiles. And in any case, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Pentagon will come up with a plan to deploy these F-16s with this long-range cruise missiles, then to enter Russian territory with F-16s, get closer as much as possible to Moscow and launch those cruise missiles. It will not surprise me if that will happen. So therefore, of course, I believe Russian air defense systems, Russian security services are on high alert, and they are working on any possible provocation that Western ruling class may come up with, including US administration. But when it comes to this statements that Washington is still not allowing you to use long-range weapon systems, I mean, this is all false, by the way. HIMARS is a long-range weapon system, right? HIMARS missiles are flying at least 150 kilometers. And HIMARS can launch ATACMS, long-range missiles that have range of over 300 kilometers, right? So what this Patrick Ryder is talking about, really? RT is reporting that, IAEA, head of IAEA, Rafael Grossi, yesterday visited Kursk nuclear power plant with some other experts from this formerly international body, UN body, but in reality, a US controlled institution. And well, military actions taking place in the vicinity of the Russia's Kursk nuclear power plant poses a risk of nuclear incident. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, told journalists on Tuesday. The senior official visited their facility located in the city of Kurchatov in the Kursk region on Monday, close to where Kiev launched a large-scale incursion earlier this month. Russian officials have previously accused Ukrainian troops of targeting the facility with drones, one of which reportedly fell next to the plant's storage of the spent fuel last week. Grossi reiterated that the Kursk nuclear power plant has an older design that does not include some of the protections that a more modern nuclear facility would have. For instance, it does not have domes which would shield its 4 reactors in case of major incident, such as a plane crashing into it. He said the head of the UN watchdog commented on his previous comparison of the Kursk plant with the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, saying it should not be interpreted as a meaning an incident at the Kursk facility would be of the same scale at the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. However, Grossi said the agency is determined to mitigate the risks. Yet again, by the way, I mean, this criminal, Rafael Grossi, despicable individual, have not mentioned who is targeting Kursk nuclear power plant, as I predicted. I spoke about this topic, right? And I said there is no way this CIA prostitute, Rafael Grossi, will say which side is targeting nuclear facilities and which side is blackmailing world basically with nuclear terrorism. It's a Kiev regime, right? And the Western ruling class that backs Kiev regime. Am I correct? And Rafael Grossi, this cheap prostitute of the CIA, of course, will say nothing about it. Of course. And I mean, I don't know what Moscow is doing, man. I don't know, man. But I would never allow CIA puppet to walk around Russia, man. Never. I mean, if this is obvious for me that this little beach is a CIA asset, then I'm quite sure Moscow also knows. And why these games then? Why these games? Moscow invited Rafael Grossi to see this nuclear property. Okay, he see it, and then what? You expect him to say the truth, say that Kiev regime is a terrorist regime and engaged in nuclear terrorism? He will not say that. Never. He is a CIA asset, right? Anyways, man, let's continue. I mean, I don't like, man, politics. I mean, too much of the games. Too much, really. I much prefer direct. To be direct always. Always, man. Cut off all this BS, man. RT is reporting that Modi dials Putin and Biden after Ukraine visit. So yesterday I shared information. It was, I don't know, first or second update that Prime Minister of India and Russian President had a phone conversation. Although we have some additional news now that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a telephone conversation with the Russian President Vladimir Putin after talking with the US President Joe Biden about his recent landmark visit to Kiev. So basically, Modi spoke not just with Putin but also with Biden. I have no idea what is the point to talk to Biden, really. And I'm quite sure Biden had no idea with whom he was talking. But information itself clearly indicates that New Delhi is trying to basically maneuver in this quite turbulent geopolitical field, not to allow Western ruling class, not to give the Western ruling class some extra reasoning to get even more hawkish towards the India or Indian leadership. And that's why probably he went to Kiev regime, to Kiev. And that's why he first called Biden and then spoke with Putin. Okay, we get that India has to do some maneuvers, by the way, because it does need, as I understand, India's national interests. Of course, New Delhi wants to have strategic relationships with Moscow and also at least working relationships with the Western states. For security reasons, first of all, and that's exactly what New Delhi is trying to accomplish here. So understandable information. Although, by the way, it is funny that Modi had a phone call with Biden. Pointless, absolutely pointless call. But yet again, this is a diplomatic move that has to be done, even if Modi understands perfectly well that this Biden guy has no idea with whom he was talking to. Absolutely, Zglad newspaper is reporting that the president of Georgia, Western asset, or CIA asset, I should say, Salome Zurabishvili, stated yesterday that upcoming parliamentary election on October 26 is basically a referendum to choose between Europe and Russia. Well, Zurabishvili is, of course, born in France. She is a French, basically. Her grandfathers or something were Georgians, but she is a French, right? She was born and raised in France. She was working in the French foreign ministry, and because Georgia undergoes some very turbulent times, somehow she ended up being Georgia's president, which is just crazy. But she's a CIA asset, right? She's a French intelligence and CIA asset, and of course she will do whatever it takes her to obey orders of her masters. First of all, from Langley. And therefore, she's coming up with such statements. But yet again, she was a French diplomat, by the way. And when it comes to France, French political class, this is immensely uneducated people, right? Unbelievably uneducated people. And Salome Zurabishvili is not really exception from that. Otherwise, she would know that, Russia is European state, right? But how she would know that? I mean, to realize that, you have to have at least a good 5th or 6th grader school education, and she clearly don't, right? And when it comes to Georgian history, by the way, for Georgia, window to continental Europe, or let's say Western Europe, because when this Western assets are talking about Europe, they always mean Western Europe, by the way. They have no respect from Central or Eastern Europe. Don't make mistake about that. They only think Europe is Western Europe, right? And when it comes to, for example, Georgia's relationship with the Western European states, well, there were some attempts of diplomacy in Georgian history some centuries and centuries ago, undoubtedly, but in practical terms, Georgia gained access to Europe once it became a part of Russian Empire. Truly, Georgia gained true access to European technologies, to European education system, to European, to everything European that Georgia experienced was through Russia, to Russian Empire, right? And some 200 years ago, by the way, Georgian educators like Ilya Chavchavadze, for example, and many others, you think they receive education thanks to what? France or Germany or UK? Entire Georgian elite or educated class, let's say, some 200 years ago, almost in its entirety receive education in Russia, in best Russian universities, right? In St. Petersburg and so on. So when Salome Zurabishvili is speaking about referendum, that these upcoming elections are sort of referendum between Europe and Russia, she clearly demonstrates how uneducated she is, because she don't know Georgia's history. She don't know that everything European in Georgia is due to Russia. From some cultural aspects to architecture, for example, everything thanks to Russia. So therefore, there is no choice there. This is a wrong choice, but yet again, that's how narrative is being created. That there is only two choices: Europe or Russia. And when they say Europe, as I said, they mean Western Europe. And you know what? Russia, as a state, by the way, is much on much higher place than any Western European country. I tell you that. And if you don't believe me, ask members of our community from Western European states. Are they happy with state of their country or economy or social fabric? Most likely they will say no. Western European states are they are in dark place right now. And Russia is not. So therefore, if the so-called political opposition want to create this narrative in Georgia that you have these choices only, Western Europe or Russia, then choice is obvious. Of course, Russia. Of course, Russia. Georgia exists thanks to Russia. Literally, Georgia and Georgians, by the way, that are able to speak on their native language, existing only thanks to Russia. And this is also history, by the way, right? Because if Russian Empire did not enter Southern Caucasus region, modern Georgian territory most likely would be part of Turkey, and Georgians will most likely be assimilated in the very same way as Georgians being assimilated in northern western parts of Turkey. And I'm talking about millions of Georgians that are now proud Turks. And even if some of them have some memory, historical memory, that they used to be Georgians, now they are Turks, by the way. And some of them even Turkish nationalists, like Erdogan. President of Turkey, by the way, is ethnic Georgian, right? But he is Turkish nationalist. So that's what would happen with Georgians, by the way, if not Russia. So it's Russia that saved Georgian language. It's Russia that saved Georgian statehood. So people should be grateful for that, by the way. This is not a joke. So choice is very simple. Always Russia. Always. And by the way, Russia is Europe also. And if you know geography, you know geography. Russia is Europe, European state in many ways. Although, of course, country is on Eurasian continent and biggest country in this world. That's also factual. RIA Novosti is reporting that Kyiv regime, by the way, you would not believe in this news, Kyiv regime wants to buy some critical equipment in Russian Federation, and this was stated by Minister of Energy of Ukraine, German Galushenko, during his interview with Politico, and he was criticized in Ukraine big time, and you wouldn't believe what Kyiv regime wants to buy. What Russian critical equipment, nuclear reactors, by the way, nuclear reactors, BBER 1000, and Kyiv regime wants to buy these nuclear reactors through Bulgaria or from Bulgaria. Interesting. This is I did not expect this news, by the way. Due to energy crisis in Kyiv-controlled territory, of course, they are looking for the ways to deal with their situation. They know Russia will never target nuclear power stations, right? And seems like they want to ask Bulgaria to give up their own nuclear reactors and give it to Ukraine. It does not work that way. These people are so delusional, man, in formally in charge of Ukraine. And their Western masters also, by the way. It does not work that way. Nuclear reactor is not a Kubik's Rubik or Rubik's Kubik to play with it and then put in the pocket and walk around. It's something much more complex, and I don't think Bulgaria will seriously consider to disassemble and then reassemble nuclear reactor into Ukraine. And I'm not sure Bulgaria even has a specialist with qualification to do such work. But anyways, information is interesting, isn't it? That Kyiv regime is hoping to buy Russian nuclear reactors, man. Interesting. RIA Novosti is also reporting that, Hyundai, by the way, South Korean giant, in many areas, by the way, from shipbuilding to car manufacturing, seems like wants to come back on a Russian market, and they are registering again trademarks of the company. Interesting. Even though relationships between Moscow and Seoul are not in a best place right now, one should notice that leadership of South Korea will somewhat restrain itself when it comes to some anti-Russian actions, despite the Western pressure. They resist, basically, collective West to impose all the sanctions on Russia as West was demanding. Seoul try to maintain some level of cooperation with the Russian side and with Moscow, and therefore, I think South Korean companies have quite a good chance, by the way, to come back to Russian market relatively easily. Moscow will most likely allow that to happen, but this is South Korea, by the way. Companies. World famous companies from other countries that left Russia and act hawkishly. Well, those companies may experience some much more significant difficulties when they will try to come back to Russian market, for sure. But it is interesting, by the way, interesting to know that Hyundai is registering in Russia its trademarks, which is definitely an indicator that this company at least has some plans to come back to this market, which was one of their top markets for Hyundai, obviously, by the way. And also I will end this update on this interesting news that according to RT, Durov's arrest boosts global Telegram downloads. So Telegram Messenger app's global popularity has surged following the arrest of the platform's founder and CEO Pavel Durov. TechCrunch has reported, citing analysts of the global downloads from market research company Sensor Tower. The number of Telegram downloads on their iOS platforms worldwide reportedly jumped 4% day over day on August 26 in France, where Durov was detained on Saturday. The Messenger became their top app in the category of social networking and was the third most downloaded app overall. In the US, Telegram moved into the second spot in the top apps chart, which excludes games before bouncing back to third. The tech news outlet noted that Apple's App Store rankings reflect a combination of metrics such as the number of apps, installs, and downloads, velocity, among the other factors. That according to App Intelligence Company, Apple Gears, as cited by TechCrunch, Telegram did not move into second place on the social networking charts on the US App Store until 3 a.m. Easter Monday, which could mean that the boost received by the app is only now underway. Through it could be short-lived. In any case, by the way, Telegram had a huge boost. Of course, French government with this political prosecution definitely give Telegram huge advertising, and more millions of people are downloading this platform, and Telegram already has over 900 million daily users, by the way, which is huge, isn't it? Over 900 million daily users, by the way. How they are counting subscribers or whatever. So interesting, isn't it? Interesting, and I believe Telegram definitely has a future, definitely, and most likely will continue its growth. And this is it for now, and the update is too long, dear friends. 52 minutes. Okay, I have to do something, man. I have to do something to make sure that my updates are about 35 minutes. Okay. So hopefully, even though our update is longer, it's packed with the news, and hopefully you will find it interesting, useful, informative. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything, any topic. That will help most likely to deal with the algorithm. And for very same reason, if you can, please share information about my channel with your friends on any of the platforms that you are actively using or in real life. And finally, if you like my work, if you like my channels, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal or Boosty, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. All the links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.